Hello and welcome to another exciting episode of Google Developers Live. This is Scripted with Android, and my name is Arun Nagarajan. I'm with the AppScript Developer Relations team, and I have a special guest.
Hey guys, my name's Adam Kosh. I'm from the Android Developer Relations team.
Excellent.
Happy to be joining Arun today.
Excellent, yeah. Super excited to have folks on the Android team. Adam usually does a lot of stuff around design and writing some killer apps, and today is going to help us walk through what we can do with Android and AppScript. So the series here today is called Scripted, and it's something that the AppScript team does where we take what AppScript's all about along with other Google products to explain how you could do more with apps, specifically AppScript. And today, in today's session, we're going to talk about how Android could leverage some of the back-end capabilities of AppScript to expose data from a spreadsheet or even notification and through Google Cloud Messaging. So that's quite exciting. So we have some exciting demos, and we're going to show some slides to orient you, and then we'll dive right into the demos, and we'll share all the code right after it. So the folks that are not familiar, Google AppScript is all about doing more with Google Apps. So it allows you to build integrations into Google Apps such as Gmail, spreadsheets, sites, Drive, Docs, and so on. It allows you to send data back and forth. It allows you to show UI. So for instance, AppScript allows you to inject menus into a spreadsheet. So it really allows you to kind of build more with existing apps technologies on the cloud. All of the code that you write is all in JavaScript, so it's super easy to pick up, and we have a bunch of APIs, and it allows you to write very quickly with all the samples we provide as well. And Adam, what is Android all about? Never heard of it. I'm just kidding.
Hopefully you've heard of Android. It's a mobile phone operating system, and of course many Android apps actually connect with cloud backends, right? They connect to the internet, they pull down information. So I think the neat thing about the demos that we're going to show you today is it sort of gives you a really good way to get to sort of set up a backend and get in touch with the various Google apps that AppScript can talk to. In addition, we're going to talk a bit about GCM, Google Cloud Messaging, which is Android's push messaging framework, which allows you to send push messages from the interwebs down to an Android device. And the nice thing about the setup today, again, is that you don't have to go and build a full-fledged server infrastructure to be able to play around with this and test it and use it. You can leverage AppScript to actually do a lot of this. So it's pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, exciting. So what we'll do is just a couple minutes to kind of orient the crowd with what we're about to show. So we'll just show a couple of slides real quick here on my laptop. So the goal today is to showcase how Google AppScript can act as a back-end system for Android apps. Most apps often need to connect to some back-end system every now and then, whether it's registering a high score or pulling down new data once a day, what have you. So a lot of times it may not be millions of users connecting every day to a system as much as just a few users in a departmental app, for instance, or maybe they're just connecting once a week for updated data. In those scenarios, AppScript is really ideal to build a simple, lightweight backend system. Obviously, we have systems like App Engine, which provide the sort of the large-scale scalability that you may want, but that also requires installing Eclipse and getting SDKs and pushing it to App Engine using all the different frameworks we provide. So it's a little bit more heavyweight, but you get the benefits of it. But AppScript allows you to do things with spreadsheets. So a lot of times spreadsheets might be sufficient for what you're trying to achieve. So if it's just a tabular data set with 10 columns and 40, 50 rows, maybe AppScript is sufficient to get started with the spreadsheet itself. Content service is the technology that we have that allows you to build these web endpoints on top of a spreadsheet. So we actually did a whole GDL on content service. Definitely check that out. And in fact, at that point, I mentioned a plug about coming back to Android, and here we are. And AppScript actually allows you to take advantage of external systems like GCM, Google Cloud Messaging. The great thing about GCM is that it's just a web call. It's not complex socket connections. It's not complex APIs. It's just if you can make an HTTP post and you have the right credentials, you're able to send a GCM message, which is great. So we'll kind of showcase that today. So back, I think 3-4 months ago now, we demoed how you could write a simple mobile app on iOS and connect to a spreadsheet for data. So the example at that point we used was a simple inventory app. The scenario we painted was you are an IT support technician or a help desk person and you're on the go and you want to be able to check inventory of various things that you may have at your tech stop or your IT help desk. So we'll just continue that scenario today. And a lot of folks, I remember at that point, were commenting saying, where's my Android demo? Where's, why are you showing iOS? The good thing is that we're here and we're going to show a lot more with Android, and we're going to enhance it to even show push notifications. So that's going to be really nice. So there's going to be 2 demos. So it's going to be 2-part, and it's going to be cohesive. It's going to be the same demo that we're going to carry on. The first part, we're going to show how you can take data from a spreadsheet and showcase it on an Android application using standard technologies like REST and JSON. And the second part, we're going to do something exciting where we're going to actually take a change that's made in the spreadsheet and then push that down to the device itself. Sound good? All right. So I actually have this crazy complicated diagram that we'll explain towards the end, but I think it makes more sense once you see the demos. All right. So let's go into our screen here, and I have a couple of kind of spreadsheets and stuff loaded up. So here's the data set that we're going to use. So a few, let me get back in here. So a few items, of some SKUs and quantities and colors and stuff like that. So we're not going to mobilize all of these. We're just going to mobilize a couple of columns, and hopefully you'll get the picture and how you can make that all available for all the rows and maybe even bidirectionally. There's a bunch of exercises left to the viewers. So let me showcase the code real quick. So a lot of this is used right from the example that we had back in January. So if you go to my GitHub page, there's a whole section for content service. We'll make all these links available right after, where you can see what it's doing, where it's lifting up a spreadsheet, opening it by ID, and then getting a particular range, that's a named range, and then it creates objects out of those rows using some sample functions that we provide, and then outputs that as a JSON string and the right MIME type set. And this is the content service call that I was talking about. I'll zoom in a little bit more so you can see that. And I have that same code here. And then what you can do is publish it as a web app. So this is sort of the magic that makes it all work. For now, I'm not using an authentication, but with Android, you can actually trap the response. And if it's a challenge response, pop up a web view where someone can authenticate as well. For now, I'm going to keep it very simple and just using some demo data here.
I just want to comment there. So when it comes to authentication, you can of course pop up a web view and then ask them to authenticate in. We actually have a sort of newer mechanism there on Android that you can also try and use. It's called Google Play Services. So that actually lets you use the system credentials that are already available on the device to authenticate in. So I haven't personally tried it with docs and whatnot yet. So I don't know how well it works or if it does work right now, but it's definitely a good experience for the users. Just because you don't have to go and enter all your credentials again into a web view. You're right, totally. Yeah, this is why we have Adam. He's making sure that we're showing the right thing. So, but yeah, that's a great exercise to try out and see if you can actually achieve it using that for authentication. And here's what the output looks like. So this is the spreadsheet that we had, and you can see it's just an array of JSON objects. Nothing special, no magic here. You have a URL that redirects it to a temporary URL, which then outputs all the JSON objects. So that's essentially a spreadsheet data turned into that. So now let's... I have a quick question. Sorry, yes. I don't know that much about AppScript, but to turn the spreadsheet cells into that JSON, is it really trivial, or do you have to still go through each row and actually change it into JSON?
It's super trivial because we have a really good recipe to do that. If you look at the code, so this is copied and pasted right off of the developer.google.com/apps-script page. And it's one of the very common ones that we do. And what it does is actually reads the ranges into a bunch of methods that normalizes the headers, makes the header names the object properties, and it does some basic checkings around empty cells, is it alphanumeric and stuff like that. So it is trivial because we've written all the code for you. Obviously, you may want to change some of the logic, and that's why it's not baked into the platform. Instead, we share some recipes for you. But yeah, so you can see that get rows data is basically passing the sheet reference and then the range reference, and then you get back objects, JavaScript objects, which you can JSONify and then just spit it out. So that's what makes it really easy, is that you don't have to iterate through all the cells, and we really ought to make this into a library, but it's easy enough to copy paste for now, and enough people have small variances. For instance, some people don't like to have the first row as a header, so all these little nuances, so we figured it's just better to leave it as a sample that people can tweak. Good question, yeah. Great. So on the client side, it's a really simple app. Let me zoom in a little bit here. All I have is a simple layout with a couple of fields, a list view, which has two fields, inventory name and inventory count. And then I am essentially making a quick call over the async task mechanism that we have on Android, which frankly, I haven't programmed in Android for a long time, and this was actually really impressive how easy it was.
Yeah, async task is useful for fetching little pieces of information from the web like this.
Yeah.
Just a note to the Android developers out there, if you did want to sort of turn this into more of a robust app, you would probably run something like this async in a background service, and then sync it into like a database of sorts, maybe a content provider, and that way you could sort of display your list view based on the content provider or database instead. But this is really good for demonstration purposes, and as you say, it's really nice and quick and easy to get up and running.
Yeah, and also there are built-in functionality to be able to turn a response into a JSON array or object, and I'm just iterating through that and then just showing in the UI.
Cool, yeah.
And I have a simple adapter here that essentially, take those row layout views and then just sets the text to the appropriate object. In this case, item.name and item.count. So real simple code. Didn't really do anything fancy here. I'm more of a back-end developer anyway. So let's go to the phone here and then see what this looks like. And then we'll. So I have an app here called AppScript GDL. I'll share the code as well. And there it is. So you were able to take the data from the spreadsheet, the inventory objects. Chromebook, I have 9 counts of it. Headphones, I have 5 counts of it, and so on. And this is all real time. So if I go into my spreadsheet now, let me zoom out here. So here's my spreadsheet on my computer. And I'm able to go and change. Let's say I just dropped off a Chromebook to someone. I changed it to 8, and then I picked up some new speakers. Let's change that to 4. So I changed 2 things. I can just go here.
Wait until.
I can go in here and hit refresh, and that's just going to go talk to the server again, and that's going to take a second, and hopefully
the Wi-Fi connect.
Stay with the Wi-Fi.
Come on, Wi-Fi.
The Wi-Fi drop off.
It's weak.
It's weak for sure. Oh, something's going on. Let me say refresh again. If that doesn't work, I'll come back to this.
Demo gods.
Yeah, we got to always be nervous about the demo gods. All right, so let me just kill this and then see if that makes a difference. All right, click on that. So that's going to go talk to the server, and hopefully it'll download the right count, which should say 8 and 4. Not happy with the Wi-Fi here. Did I change something with the application? No, it should be all published. Let's see what's going on here. All right, so we'll just check to see if the internet is working or if it's my app that's broken. We go to google.com. No, the Wi-Fi is giving me some trouble.
Yeah, let me set up a.
All right, so what that should show is the updated data. Let me see if I have my other phone.
One thing you do need is a network connection.
One thing you definitely need is a network connection. Oh, it seems
very helpful.
Let me see if I have another phone that I can pull up here real quick. Apologize for that. Let's see here. Pull my personal phone here. Hopefully I will get no calls or anything on this. All right, let me see. Here it is.
Quickly try and add this thing.
So this should load, and there it is. So that worked. I'll leave this here. I'll just use my phone for the time being. Let me actually do a quick test again. Go back to my computer to see if this picks up. So let's change the row count from Chromebook to 6 to 8, and then I'll say refresh data. And it updated, so a lot faster this time. We'll stick with my phone for the demo, and hopefully Wi-Fi will get better with the other phone here. So that was the process there was actually fairly straightforward. All we did was refetch the data and repaint the list view. Nothing fancy, but you kind of see the point of in a spreadsheet, you have a natural user interface. You're able to make quick changes, and then since it's all serving from the spreadsheet itself, the content service, it is immediately reflected on the device whenever you make a quick call, right? So that's actually super powerful in that it's not something that you have to synchronize. It's just refreshing, picks up. But what if what if there are other scenarios where you want to notify the end user when a change happens? So that's really where the second part of the demo comes into place, and that's what we call Google Cloud Messaging. And it's something that we announced a year ago, 2 years ago.
Yeah, I believe last year we announced it. Yeah, it was a replacement to the original push framework, which was C2DM.
That's right. Yeah, and one of the nice things I like about it is that it's super straightforward to get started. It didn't require me to know a lot of server technologies that are specific to Google. It was just standard post and standard body, post body that came in that I was able to handle in AppScript itself. So in fact, for this, the documentation is actually really robust. So if you go to, I believe, developer.android.com/Google/GCM, there's a wealth of content there about how you can get started. The first thing you have to keep in mind is that you have to create a Google API project for this. And it's actually straightforward. I've created one, and I'm using a demo key that I'll show you. But you'll have to create your own. I'll disable the key right after this demo. So there's a couple of things that you have to be careful about from a process standpoint. There's something about the project ID you need to save as well. So once you create this project, there's two pieces of information that you need to grab onto: the API key and then the project ID. And in fact, what I've done is you'll see a lot of similarities with the demo application and the UI that I'm showing. And that's because I've taken the demo application as my basic framework. So I've kind of built everything around it. And the demo application actually talks quite a bit about the server side of it. So in this, it talks about how to run a Java server to achieve the push registry, and then also to send the push messages, and also shows you how you can run that on App Engine. And the idea is that all of this is possible in AppScript. So you can build a simple automated server in AppScript itself.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is, like when I've run through this before, I find the server piece that takes me the longest, just because I'm really bad at that kind of stuff, like getting App Engine set up and getting it working correctly the way I want. And that's why I think this is really a nice way to sort of get up and running on GCM quickly using AppScript.
Yep, and that's great. So I'll just show the demo, and hopefully this time around things will.
I put this on tethered to my phone, so maybe it'll work.
Okay. Cool.
We could try both.
All right, let's
whichever has the best Wi-Fi.
This one has let's go back to this guy. All right, so we're on this better Wi-Fi situation
Potentially.
here. Potentially. All right, so let's give it a shot. So you can see that the data is back to what the other device was showing, which is Chromebook at 6 and speakers at 4 and so on. And what we're going to do is I'll just show the demo first, and then we'll explain all the different moving pieces, because there's quite a few. I could have simplified this into one single big AppScript project, but I kept it different, separated so that it's easier to explain and then potentially for you to optimize and clean up. So let me go back to my spreadsheet here. And if you go to Tools, Script Editor, one of the things you'll see here is this call for send notification. So a spreadsheet has this concept of associated script, which can have a lot of interesting things about the spreadsheet exposed into the script. So events, be able to inject menus into the script itself, and a whole slew of things in between. So I just went to Tools and Script Editor. I already kind of seeded the code here, but this is, as you can see, very straightforward code to do. And I'm referencing something called SharedDB, which is a library. And you can find these under Resources, Manage Libraries. And I will show you where this library is defined and why I have it as a library in a bit. And all I'm doing is saying send GCM, and I'm just saying something was edited. And right now I'll have to manually run this. And what I'll do is now turn this into a trigger. So I can say send notification is the function that I want to run from the spreadsheet as far as events go on the onEdit function. All right. So I'm going to hit save. And that's really it. That registers an event, a trigger associated with the onEdit event. So I'm going to go in here,
So just so I got this right, whenever you make any edit to the spreadsheet now, that trigger will run?
Yep,
So,
exactly.
cool.
And that's then each user can register a trigger for themselves. In this case, I've done it for me as my demo account, but there's ways you can kind of make this much more broader base as well. So I'm going to change this Chromebook. Let's just go to, I've decided to deploy Chrome Pixels to everybody. I'm making that change. And then, I don't know if you caught that. That was actually too quick.
You want to change something again,
I'll change something again. So my hand's on the monitor, and I'll make it 101 Chromebooks. I'm going to tab off. And then you can see that right on my device, there's a notification first, and then the UI knows to refresh itself and pick up the new count as well. And it also, since it's the Android notifications UI is actually quite nice, it injects itself into the what's called the notification panel. Is that the right term for it?
Notification.
And I remember at I/O last year we unveiled a really nice look and feel for this as well. So I can actually
you can have expanded notifications, include additional information in those notifications.
Yep. And for now, I'm just showing a very basic set of things in there. And one of the nice things about GCM is that the app doesn't have to be running. So I could actually have the app killed, right? So I can minimize this and swipe it out. And if I make a change here, let's just say I've given out 10 of my Chromebooks and I'm down to 91. I hit tab off, and that is, as you can see, it beeps and the notification comes in, and I think it took all of 3 seconds, and I can then go tap on it, and then that'll come back up, and it should reflect the right data now, 91. So that's GCM in a nutshell, and the whole idea is that the end user doesn't have to go in and say refresh or check every day and be worried about whether they have the right data or not. And this combined with the offline capabilities of Android applications, you can actually have a pretty nicely set up app where it only checks for updates when there's new data available, rather than constantly checking or the user worried about saying, hey, is there new data?
Right, of course, the other option is to have like every 5 minutes check the server, right? Like that's going to drain the user's battery. It's not a great experience. It's going to take up extra CPU and battery. So this is just really nice. You know, if there's no changes, it's not going to refresh at all.
That's right. That's right. And that's really nice in allowing just saving data as well, because that's expensive around the world here.
Yeah. One quick note. Right now we're sending a ping down to the device which says, hey, there's new data. Why don't you go and refresh? But GCM also supports sending an actual payload in the message as well. So I think it's up to a 4 kilobyte payload. So if your message is small enough and you have the right setup, you can actually send the entire amount of data, change data, in the payload as well.
Yeah.
And that way it doesn't even need to go and refresh. It can just automatically use the information that was sent down from GCM.
That's a really good point, because what I could have done here is, instead of send message, I could have just JSONified the objects and sent it right down.
Yeah, you could.
Right. So that's actually something.
It's a little bit more complicated because, say, the data is really large there and you want to send a delta. But, it's definitely possible, and it's definitely a really, really neat feature.
Yeah, for sure. So now let's take a step back and see how this all is connected and how it all works. So there's so this is a script that's associated with a spreadsheet. So all this is there for is to detect changes and then to delegate that off to the actual system that's making the push messages, sending out the push messages. And that's in a project called ShareDB, and I'm referencing that by this concept called library. And all of this is documented on our website, and I'll make sure this is shared out from a code standpoint as well. And here's my ShareDB project. And all this is doing is it provides a unified data store that can be shared across multiple projects. It's not possible to share a data store today between projects. And the way you do it is by sharing library, because that is a lot easier to control access to, and it's provided manually by the developer. So it's actually a little bit more flexible, even though sometimes it can be a little bit painful. And then here's the function that basically says send GCM, and it just it defaults it to hello world if nothing is passed in, and it's all pure JavaScript here. So this is not any new syntax or anything like that you have to learn. So DB is our data store. It's a product called ScriptDB, and that's something that we launched last year at I/O, and it allows you to store JavaScript objects as is into a database and then query them back. So what I'm checking here to see is, give me all the systems, all the records in the system that has a registration ID. And then I'm just tracking them all into a JavaScript array. And then I have my API key here, which I'll destroy after this demo. And then here are the URL fetch options that I have, and it's basically URL fetch is basically our I think App Engine calls it the same thing. In fact, allows you to make outbound connections from the Google data centers to, in this case, also a Google data center running GCM. So all this code is running on different parts of the Google data center, if you can think about it that way. And then that's it. It just takes this and then sends it. I can actually send it to multiple systems, multiple devices. So if I have multiple devices registered against the same GCM registrar, I can send one call with an array of registration IDs, and they'll all get notified. So you don't have to make individual call for every device, which is actually, I think, one of the benefits of GCM as well.
Yeah, that was one of the new things added, I guess, batching calls in GCM versus the older C2DM.
Yep.
And that's nice because, I mean, I don't know if this particular app would have 1 million users, but say an app had 1 million users, you can batch up and update all those devices with one push message.
Yeah, and that's actually something that is, even for testing purposes, reducing the call volume from my code is a nice thing. Mm-hmm. So this is the shared library. How does data get into this data store? Because we haven't shown how we have collected the device IDs, the registration IDs as it's called here. So for that, I have another endpoint. In this case, I'm just calling it GCM, and this registers a do post handler, which essentially gets called when the client makes a call for post. I also have a do get, which I'm using for some debugging purposes to show the UI of what's in here. And it basically says, if the device wants to be unregistered, remove that record. If it's not there and the type is register, just store that record. E.parameter is basically the JSON object, and that's it. This is how we're registering and unregistering users. And there's actually a simple UI for this. I'll refresh just to clean this up. This is a ScriptDB visualization console that I discussed a little while back in one of the GDLs. And you essentially enter a query, and empty brackets mean everything. And I can just run query and see what's in the data store. So in this case, there are 2 different registration IDs for the 2 devices that I've done. So if I go back to my phone here, and I go and say unregister, and that's going to make a call to unregister, hopefully. Maybe it's not working. Oh, there it goes. It's making a call to unregister, and it says successfully removed. Tiny font, apologize. And then if I go back to my system here and say run query, so you'll see a new line pop up, and then it should only return 1 record. So you can see that there's only 1 record now, and these are the 2 records from the prior query. So this record 940 is gone because the user said, I don't want any more messages from the system, and it's our responsibility to get rid of that registration record. And if the user wants it again, they could register again. And all of this, of course, is running on the Google Cloud, which is great. So the system where registration IDs are stored is in the Google Cloud. The data source itself, which is a spreadsheet, is in the Google Cloud. And GCM, of course, is Google Cloud Messaging, is routing via that. So it's actually great to be able to just copy paste some code into a script editor. And I think I mentioned briefly that it's all done in the browser, but here's the script editor. It looks and feels like a simplified IDE, and you can just punch in some JavaScript code and off you go. In this case, the notification is on every edit, but here's where you can put in your business logic. You could say only notify me between work hours, or only notify me if something exceeds a threshold, and so on. So you can actually build some interesting business processes around this. So with that, let me actually go back and just show you the diagram that I said I will show in a little bit. I think this will help kind of see how everything kind of came together. So the top part of the diagram is actually real straightforward. An Android device making an HTTP call to get data against the content service, which returns JSON from the spreadsheet. So this is really straightforward, something that makes sense, and that's our little icon for AppScript. And then the bottom half is the much more complicated one because there are a lot of moving pieces. The first part is the GCM, the Google Cloud Messaging component. The native application is expected to make a registration call against the GCM and a server, and the server gets what's called the registration ID. The registration ID is stored into a shared data store, which is also responsible for sending out the push messages. There's also a console view to see all active registration IDs. And then here's a little component that tracks changes and then queues up messages against the data store, which then sends it out to the GCM component, which then notifies the device. So a lot of different moving pieces. Hopefully this diagram kind of brought it all together. But the idea is that this whole box here, this little gray box, is all in the Google Cloud as far as applications, logic, and even some of the messaging components go as your application is concerned. And the client-side code is, like I said, straight from the GCM demo. So if you just go to this page and then download the client and the server code, just look at the client code, and then everywhere there's an App Engine URL, replace that with the URL for your application. So to kind of show you that in action, you can see that the server URL is script.google.com URL instead of my host or some other local server or App Engine server. So certainly it's not a big delta change as far as how things work. One other change that I had to make here was in the server utilities code. AppScript doesn't allow for paths on your web application, so you cannot have /register. So I kind of commented that out and just have a type in the URL that tells, in the post body, that tells me what I'm trying to achieve. So it's something that you should keep in mind. Instead of App Engine allows you to have /whatever/ my particular path. With AppScript, there's no router, and everything kind of goes in via one endpoint, the do post or the do get endpoint, and you have to, through parameters, decide which way you want to go. And unregister is very similar as well. Same URL with the type of unregister. So that's really all we wanted to show. All the code will be shared. Certainly, we were very excited to see what you can build with it. I think there's a lot of interesting use cases that just showing it off internally to some folks here they've thought of. Allows you to use apps, Google Apps as spreadsheets, and maybe even Docs, and Gmail, of course. All of that as a data source for your Android applications. Anything that I missed, Adam?
Not really. I guess one question for you is, how does this kind of scale? Like, when making the do get and do post, are there quotas, or can people go and make as many calls as they want?
Yeah, so there are quotas. Our quotas are described in our dashboard. So I'll just pull that up real quick. It's a really good question. It's AppScript is not a platform with which you'll build a business by itself, right? So there's definitely quotas. It's not, and there's a free version. So if you have a Gmail account, you can start using this. So if I go to there and then go to dashboard and quotas and go to quota limits, you will see a lot of the quota described here. And there's a bunch of information about URL fetch and web applications as well. And this is something that you can track around, what are you doing with your application, and is AppScript going to be the right fit for you? But in general, if you're only using it for a few dozen users, or if you're not abusing it in any crazy way, and you're not trying to build millions of user application installs, I think it's going to be fine. But there's definitely a fine line between, do I want to control the whole platform in something like App Engine, where you have a lot more control and you can pay for more scale. With AppScript, there's a free quota that anyone can build with and test with, and then you can graduate to the Google Apps for Business version. But even that is capped at a certain limit. So you'll want to be a little careful if you are planning to build the next Angry Birds or something like that, I guess.
I mean, one thing I just really like about this, though, is for sort of rapid prototyping, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you can't beat this really when you just want to get up and try out GCM or something like that.
Yeah.
See how it works and maybe create some proof of concepts and whatnot.
And someone also gave me a really good idea where this may not be right for data, but maybe for configuration settings that you can cache for a long period of time and then only manually fetch against the spreadsheet. So maybe colors, maybe labels, things like that you may want to tuck away under a debug flag or something like that only certain people can get at. Maybe that's a good way for you to use this as well, where the spreadsheet gives you such a simple interface where you can change things, add things very quickly, even use the Google form to populate into it. So it allows you to build these administrative tools as well. So not just for data, but maybe for certain configuration settings. So that's all I had. Sorry, the demo had some issues early on, but hopefully you saw the whole thing end to end. And thank you very much, Adam, for joining us.
No, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
It's really, really interesting stuff. Really cool.
Thank you very much, and we'll share the code with you, and looking forward to what you can do with this.
See you guys.
Yeah.
Bye.